Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about something that shapes our lives, our thoughts, and even our realities more than we may imagine. The power of words. Words are not just symbols that convey information. They are the building blocks of perception, the very essence of communication, and in many ways, the tools by which our minds are shaped and sometimes controlled. Words can be talismanic, like magic spells, hence why it's called spelling, and why we say we write with cursive. You see, we cast spells with the words we use. They have the power to influence, transform, and even manipulate our perception of the world. But more than that, we are all living in a model of reality, a tale, that has been constructed out of the words we use, and furthermore, it matters to us. At their core, words are not neutral. They carry weight, energy, and meaning that can be used to enchant, persuade, and sometimes deceive. Throughout history, words have been the foundation of ideologies, political movements, and social change. And at the same time, they have been twisted to serve more insidious purposes, often to control masses of people and to shape their thoughts without them even realizing it. We must first acknowledge that language is not just a tool for communication. It is the lens through which we see the world. Think about it. We either think in words or we think in images. Our words define our thoughts, and our thoughts define how we interpret the world around us. Linguists have long understood that the language we use shapes our perception of reality. This is known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, or linguistic relativity, which suggests that the structure and vocabulary of a language influence the way its speakers view and understand the world. In essence, the words we use don't just describe reality, they help to create it. For example, think of how different cultures might use language to describe a color or an emotion. A word like happiness might not have the same emotional weight or meaning in different languages, leading to subtle shifts in how people experience and express that emotion. This is just one example of how language constructs our understanding and perception of the world. However, this power of language is not always benign. It can be wielded as a weapon, used to obscure, manipulate, and control. Language can be a tool of enchantment. Politicians, advertisers, and propagandists all understand this. They use words not just to inform, but to influence and persuade. One of the clearest examples of this can be seen in political rhetoric. Political slogans are often intentionally vague, designed to sound inspirational while carrying little specific meaning. Phrases like hope, change, or make America great again are filled with emotional appeal. But if you break them down, they don't tell us how to achieve these goals or what they truly mean, specifically. These slogans tap into deep-seated desires and fears, creating a sense of unity or belonging while leaving the content of those ideas deliberately undefined. This allows people to project their own hopes, fears, and interpretations onto the slogans, giving them a sense of personal ownership over ideas that are, in reality, crafted to serve specific political or commercial agendas. The ambiguity of language is one of its most powerful tools for mass influence. When we hear a slogan, it doesn't matter if we understand the specifics. What matters is the emotional or psychological resonance it creates within us. By leaving these things vague, it becomes a blank slate onto which people can attach their desires, hopes, or even fears. This is a crucial tool in mass mind control because it allows manipulators of language to direct public thought without revealing their true intentions. Now, let's look at a more extreme and yet profoundly relevant example. George Orwell's concept of newspeak from his novel 1984. Orwell's dystopian society was built on the idea that controlling language is the most effective way to control thought. In 1984, the totalitarian regime uses newspeak, a language designed to limit the range of thought. Words are systematically stripped of meaning or altered so that subversive ideas cannot be expressed. If you can control the words people use, Orwell argues, you can control their very ability to think critically. A simplified, controlled language makes it difficult, if not impossible, for people to even conceptualize rebellion or dissent. Orwell's concept may sound extreme, but we can see traces of this in modern political discourse. Now, before we continue, I just want to mention that it's worth pondering. It's worth pondering very deeply what the world would be like if we didn't have the word to express love. We may feel it, but by all accounts, it doesn't actually exist without the word to describe it. What about the word freedom and all words that mean freedom, like liberty? What if those words didn't exist? Orwell's concept, again, may sound extreme, but Newspeak isn't just the invention of fictional tyrants. We see it today in the euphemisms and doublespeak that are often used by politicians, corporate leaders, and governments. Terms like enhanced interrogation for torture or collateral damage for civilian casualties are intentionally chosen to dull the emotional impact of these actions. In these cases, language is being used to mask uncomfortable truths and to make actions more palatable or acceptable. One of the quotes that was used in Orwell's book is, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." Well, just think about how ironic it is to create a bill called the Patriot Act, which strips Americans of their rights, or the Freedom Act. The power of language to influence thought is not just a feature of totalitarian regimes. It exists in more subtle forms in democracies where language is often used to create perceptions and narratives that serve particular interests, whether political, corporate, or ideological.
How's the Newspeak committee?
Working overtime.
Butter, 2%. Milk, 6%.
Plus big wastage and adjectives.
8%. Mutton, 3%.
Plus big problem is timing the language to scientific advance.
Pork, 3%.
Yes.
Poultry, 9%.
It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words.
Sugar, 2.4%. Lard,
You won't have seen the dictionary, 10th edition yet, Smith.
margarine, 7.5%.
It's that thick.
Coffee, 8%.
The 11th edition will be that
6%.
thick.
Bread, 7%. Overall, food
Well, the revolution will be complete when the language is perfect.
The secret is to move from translation to direct thought to automatic response. No need for self-discipline. Language coming from here, not from here.
Excuse me for intruding, but what you're saying is that we should be rid of the last vestiges of Goldsteinism when the language has been cleaned. I couldn't be more in agreement with you, brother.
Absolutely.
Truly staggering results. Praise be to our leader and the party workers.
Now, having somewhat successfully established my press credentials, and because you and I have at least one thing in common, which is that all of us deal with language all the time, I thought it might be nice today for me to come to you with some of my language complaints. Certainly not to blame them on you, although, of course, you are implicated. And not that you can help it. I mean, the problem is really with the people you cover. The politicians, the celebrities, and the lawyers. And although their level of insincerity is astonishing, it's still kind of fun to hear them talk. In particular, it's fun to listen to Washington talk. Whenever the issue of term limits comes up, I always tell people the only term limits I'm interested in would be to limit some of the terms used by politicians. They speak, of course, with great caution because they must take care not to actually say anything. Proof of this, according to their own words, is that they don't actually say things, they indicate them. As I indicated yesterday, and as the president indicated to me, but sometimes they don't indicate, they suggest. Let me suggest that as I indicated yesterday, I haven't determined that yet. See, they don't decide, they determine. If it's a really serious matter, they make a judgment. I haven't made a judgment on that yet. When the hearings are concluded, I will make a judgment, or I might make an assessment. I'm not sure, I haven't determined that yet. But when I do, I will advise you. They don't tell, they advise. I advised him that I had made a judgment. Thus far, he hasn't responded. They don't answer, they respond. He hasn't responded to my initiative. An initiative is an idea that isn't going anywhere. When he responds to my initiative, I will review his response, take a position, and make a recommendation. See, they don't read, they review. They don't have opinions, they take positions, and they don't give advice, they make recommendations. And so, at long last, after each has responded to the other's initiatives, and each has reviewed the other's responses, and everyone has taken a position, made a judgment, and offered a recommendation, now they have to do something. But that would be much too direct. So instead, they address the problem. We're addressing the problem, and we'll soon be proceeding. That's a big activity here in Washington. Proceeding. They're always proceeding or moving forward. A lot of that goes on. Senator, have you solved that problem? Well, we're moving forward on that. And when they're not moving forward, they're moving something else forward, such as the process. We have to move the process forward so we can implement the provisions of the initiative in order to meet these challenges. No one has problems anymore. Challenges. That's why we need people who can make the tough decisions. Tough decisions like how much soft money can I expect to collect in exchange for my core values? So that I can continue my work in government. Of course, no politician would admit to such a lowly station as working in government, serving the nation. I'm serving the nation. Another favorite distortion is public service. I'm in public service. I like America, don't you? The food is great, but the public service is terrible. Now, folks, a question for you. Do you think it's possible that one of these politicians, whose judgment is so poor that he honestly thinks of himself as serving the nation, might occasionally be expected to indulge in a little patriotism? Huh? What do you think? Well, of course, not only is it possible, it's inevitable, and that's when he's at his very best. That's when he trots out the really good stuff all across this great land of ours. The greatest nation on earth, the greatest nation in the history of the world. And in times of military crisis, you can be sure that someone in a suit in this town will eventually plant himself in front of a camera and carry on a great deal about the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. Now, normally, during peacetime, the politicians will refer to people in the military as our young men and women stationed around the world. But in wartime, they quickly become our brave young fighting men and women stationed halfway around the world in places whose names they can't pronounce, wondering if they'll ever see their loved ones again. For added emotional impact, sons and daughters can always be substituted for men and women. And so I think we can sum this up by saying that where the military is concerned, the extent of a politician's insincerity can be measured by how far around the world our soldiers are stationed and whether or not any of them can pronounce it. Incidentally, another way of expressing this sentiment is to say we're sending our young men and women to places the average American can't find on a map. I've always thought it was kind of funny and somewhat out of character for a politician to go out of his way to point out the low level of American intelligence when, indeed, his very job depends upon it. It would seem to fly in the face of that other rhetorical standby of theirs. The American people are a lot smarter than they're given credit for. This is said with a straight face, although it is obvious, of course, that the proposition is being stated precisely backwards. But the politicians, God bless them, or something like that, they're at their most entertaining when they're in trouble. When they're in trouble, their explanations usually begin simply with words like miscommunication. What did you do wrong, Senator? Well, it was a miscommunication. Or I was quoted out of context. Better yet, and more ironic, they twisted my words. Such a nice touch. A person who routinely spends his days torturing the language complains, they twisted my words. Then, as the controversy continues to heat up, he moves to his next level of complaint. The whole thing has been blown out of proportion. It's always the whole thing. Apparently, no one has ever claimed that only a small portion of something was blown out of proportion. Has to be the whole thing. That's because now he's feeling the heat. And so, as time passes and more evidence comes in, he suddenly changes directions and tells us, we're trying to get to the bottom of this. Now he's on the side of law and order. It's jiu-jitsu, really. We're trying to get to the bottom of this so we can get the facts out to the American people. That's always a nice touch, American people. In fact, at this point, he might even say, I'm willing to trust in the fairness of the American people. Clearly, he's preparing us for something. And so, when finally all the facts come out and our subject seems quite guilty, he employs that sublime use of the passive voice, mistakes were made. Mistakes were made, don't look at me, probably someone in my office. Things are moving faster now. Mistakes were made is rapidly overtaken by there is no evidence. No one has proven anything. Eventually I will be exonerated. I have faith in the American judicial system and that certain sign that things are closing in. Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? Whatever happened? Well, Well, he's about to find out. And we know this must be true because the next thing we hear from him is, I just want to put this thing behind me and get on with my life. I just want to put this behind me. That's an expression we hear a lot these days in all walks of life. From people in all walks of life. Usually the person in question has committed some unspeakable act. Yes, it's true, I strangled my wife, shot the triplets, set fire to the house, and sold my young son to an old man on the train. But now I just want to put this thing behind me. Get on with it. That's the problem in this country. Too many people getting on with their lives. I think what we really need more of is ritual suicide. You know? Never mind the press conferences. Get the big knife out of the drawer. Personally, what I want to do is I want to put this thing behind me and get on with my life, thing behind me and get on with my life. I'll repeat that for you. Personally, I want to put this thing behind me and get on with my life, thing behind me and get on with my life. And just to round out this section, let's hope there's a special place in hell reserved for those who have recently decided to take responsibility for their actions. That's the big thing now, taking responsibility for your actions, like it's a recent discovery. You know, he's taking responsibility for his actions. Well, isn't that wonderful? Ask him if he's willing to take responsibility for my actions, along with my alimony, my car payments, and my gambling debts.
We must also consider how words can be weaponized for brainwashing and mass control. Words can create powerful mental frameworks that guide people's actions and beliefs. Consider how certain phrases or slogans can rally a group of people to a cause, even one that might not serve their best interests. Think of how leaders, both in history and in our modern world, have used the power of rhetoric to create a sense of unity and purpose, sometimes at the expense of truth. Brainwashing often relies on the repetitive use of certain words and ideas that alter how an individual sees themselves and the world around them. The more a word or concept is repeated, the more it becomes embedded in the subconscious. This is a process of conditioning that happens without the individual being fully aware of it. Just as advertising makes us associate a brand with a certain lifestyle, political rhetoric can make us associate an entire ideology with a set of emotions or concepts that may be far removed from its reality. It is clear that language is not just a tool for communication. It is a talismanic instrument that shapes how we perceive and understand the world. It can be used to enchant, to persuade, and at its worst, to control. Words carry weight far beyond their surface meaning, and when wielded with skill, they can direct thoughts, emotions, and actions on a massive scale. We must be mindful of how language is used around us, whether in the political sphere, in the media, or in everyday life. As individuals, we have the power to be conscious of how language is shaping our thoughts and perceptions. The next time you hear a slogan, a political speech, or an advertisement, I encourage you to ask yourself, what is the agenda behind these words? Who benefits? What are they asking me to believe, and how are they shaping my perception of reality? By understanding the power of words, we can begin to regain control over how we think and ultimately over how we see the world. Words are not just tools for communication, they are very building blocks of our consciousness. Let's make sure we use them wisely. One of the clearest examples of how language can be used to obscure, confuse, and control is the phenomenon of legalese. Legalese, or legal language, is a highly specialized and often impenetrable form of communication. It is deliberately complex, full of jargon, and designed to make simple concepts seem far more complicated than they need to be. While the intention behind legalese is ostensibly to provide precision and clarity, in reality it serves to exclude the general population from understanding legal matters, reinforcing power structures where only a select few can truly navigate the system. Legalese acts as a barrier between ordinary people and the law. It gives legal professionals the ability to control the interpretation of laws and legal processes. It's the language that turns straightforward matters such as contracts or governmental policies into dense, convoluted text that only those with legal expertise can fully comprehend. They have their own dictionary, by the way. It's called the Black's Law Dictionary. The average citizen, often without the necessary training or knowledge, becomes disempowered, unable to fully grasp what they are agreeing to or what their rights are. When laws are drafted in ways that are intentionally opaque, it becomes more easy for powerful entities, be they governments, corporations, or other institutions, to manipulate the public. It allows them to push through policies or contracts that might be unpalatable or unjust without facing significant opposition. Legalese in this way is a language of exclusion and control, giving a distinct advantage to those who understand its intricacies while leaving the masses in the dark.
Individuals. We are our free man, which is our flesh and blood, our human aspect, and we're our straw man. And that straw man is that corporate slave, if you will, to the United States corporate government.
Ah, the government. It loves you and wants to keep you safe and well. It even wants to make paying taxes, fines, and court costs easier for you. How? Well, you'll need to meet your straw man. He was born the same day you were. He looks like you, has the same name, and lives in your house, but you never knew he existed. You will have even paid his parking tickets or taxes. The worst part? He's been dead from day one. From every birth certificate, a legal personality, or legal fiction, is created with the same name to confuse little old you into thinking it's you. So, there is a human you and a paper you, or as it's commonly known, a straw man. So when it seems like government officials, court clerks, or the police are speaking English, they aren't. They're speaking legalese, designed to make you agree to verbal and written contracts without even knowing about it, all spun from Black's Law Dictionary. For example, when the police say, "Do you understand?" you'll say, "Yes." What they are really saying is, "Do you stand under our authority?" Oops-a-daisy, you just created a verbal contract with them. Oh, you clever government.
In addition to legalese, we must also consider the concept of green language, a term often associated with mystery and esoteric traditions. Green language is sometimes referred to as the language of the mysteries, a form of symbolic communication that has been employed by secret societies, initiates, and esoteric groups throughout history. The essence of green language lies in the idea that words are not merely direct symbols, but contain hidden meanings, layers of interpretation that reveal deeper truths or facilitate control. The word green itself is symbolic. It points to growth, to secret knowledge, to things that grow in the shadows. The use of symbols, coded language, and double meanings is a hallmark of green language. While green language is often linked with alchemy, mysticism, or ancient traditions, the concept applies more broadly to how language can be used to control understanding and perception. Even in the modern world, political speech and advertising employ a form of green language when they use emotionally charged terms and images designed to invoke subconscious reactions. The idea is to imprint a deeper message in the mind, one that bypasses the rational faculties and speaks directly to the emotional core. This is a key tool for manipulators, as it can plant seeds of ideas that grow and influence behavior without the individual being fully aware of it. In this sense, green language is a more sophisticated, covert version of using words as tools of influence. To understand the true power of words, we must also look at etymology, the study of the origin of words and how their meanings have evolved over time. The Phoenician origins is a very fascinating subject. Unfortunately, I won't be able to break down very much here, although I'm sure I will in the future. Every word carries with it a history, a legacy that shapes its current meaning and resonance. The origins of words often reveal their deeper, more subconscious associations, and it is this deeper current of meaning that can be wielded for influence. Etymology plays a critical role in shaping the way we think about the words we use and the ideas they represent. Words evolve over time, and their meanings often shift in ways that can alter our perceptions. When leaders and political figures use certain words with specific etymological roots, they invoke these historical meanings, shaping the way we interpret the world around us. Consider how the term freedom is often used in political discourse. While freedom implies liberty and choice, the way it is framed in political speech can often give it a restrictive or control-oriented meaning. A dictator might speak of freedom while simultaneously limiting personal liberties, using the word's emotional power to rally support while undermining its true meaning. Think about this when you hear terms like sustainable development. Now, we come to perhaps the most disturbing application of language, how words shape the power of a dictator. A dictator's rise to power is often not just through force or fear, but through their mastery of language. What makes a dictator effective is not just their ability to control resources or armies, it's their ability to control thought, to speak in ways that make people believe in their vision, often to the point where their authority is accepted without question. In totalitarian regimes, the leader is often portrayed as a near mythical figure, and their words are not seen as mere communication, but as commands from above, commands that must be followed without hesitation. The dictator's words can create a world where there is no distinction between truth and propaganda, where the leader's will becomes synonymous with reality itself. Take, for example, the speeches of dictators like Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin. These figures understood the talismanic nature of language. They spoke in ways that created us versus them divisions, using rhetoric that portrayed entire populations as enemies or traitors. They used words to create fear, unity, and above all, loyalty. By constantly repeating certain phrases, ideas, and slogans, they shaped entire generations' beliefs and behaviors, often leading to catastrophic consequences. What we learn from this is that language in the hands of a dictator is not just a tool for communication. It becomes a weapon of control, an instrument for molding reality. Dictators do not just rule through violence, they rule through the subjugation of thought, through language that is designed to make people see the world through their eyes, to make them believe in their vision, and to deny other possibilities. Language is not a neutral force. It is an instrument of power. It shapes our thoughts, our perceptions, and our understanding of reality itself. From legalese to green language to the subtle implications of etymology, words are carefully crafted to influence and control. They can rally nations to war, convince millions to accept tyranny, or subtly change our worldview without us even realizing it. We must recognize that the true power of words lies in their ability to shape the world around us. Dictators understand this better than anyone. They know that to control a nation, they must first control the language, to warp its meanings, to create new definitions, and to make people think in ways that serve their agenda. As we navigate our daily lives, we must become more aware of how language is used around us. Whether it's in politics, advertising, or media, the words we hear shape the world we live in. The questions we must ask ourselves is, who is using these words, and what reality are they trying to create? Words are not just the means by which we communicate, they are the fabric of our reality, the very stuff of existence. As the philosopher and visionary Terence McKenna once said, "The world is made of words, and if you know the words that the world is made of, you can make of it whatever you wish."
The mind is somehow a co-creator in the process of reality through acts of language. And language is very, very mysterious. I mean, it is true magic. People run all over the place looking for paranormal abilities. But notice that when I speak, if your internal dictionary matches my internal dictionary, that my thoughts cross through the air as an acoustical pressure wave and are reconstructed inside your cerebral cortex as your thought, your understanding of my words. Telepathy exists. It's just that the carrier wave is small mouth noises. All so-called primitive people know that the world is made of language, that you sing it into existence, that what you say it is what it is, that it is maintained in existence by an act of rational apprehension. And it's only science which has taken this very weird approach and said, no, the world is somehow independent from the act of description. And this is not a situation where we have two separate points of view, both open-hearted and trying their best to work hard for you. Science carried out its analysis of nature to the point where it shot itself in the foot. Science carried out an analysis of nature that went to such depth that it discovered that nature doesn't exist except as an object of description. That there are no little objects winging their way through empty space.
At first glance, this may sound like a poetic exaggeration, but McKenna's insight goes much deeper. The notion that language is not simply a tool for describing the world, but that it shapes the world itself, suggests that everything around us, from the material to the abstract, is permeated by the energy of language. Words do not just reflect our thoughts, they actively create them. They give form to our expressions, our experiences, they guide our perceptions, and they even structure our very reality. If we look more closely at the frameworks we live within, whether social, political, or scientific, we begin to see that they are all held together by an invisible yet incredibly potent network of language. Richard Dawkins has also captured the generative power of words, albeit in a more scientific context, through his concept of memes. He proposed that ideas, much like genes, propagate throughout culture by being passed from one mind to another. In this sense, we are all biological vessels for words, constantly absorbing and transmitting language that shapes not just our thoughts, but our very behavior. Dawkins was not simply talking about words as passive carriers of information. He was describing how we, as humans, are constructed from language, how our thoughts and actions are the result of complex sets of instructions encoded in the language we use. This idea connects to the ancient and perennial wisdom that language is not just a reflection of the world, it is what builds the world. In this way, we are not just speaking words, we are living them, constantly in the process of becoming the very narratives we recite.
Die! Die! Why won't you die? Why won't you die?
Beneath this mask, there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea, Mr. Creedy. And ideas are bulletproof.
In fact, the idea that language is generative is not new at all. It has very ancient roots. If we look to the beginning of the Bible, we see that in the beginning was the Word. This phrase, so fundamental to Western thought, suggests that the universe itself was spoken into existence. The act of creation itself was initiated by language, by the Word, by an utterance that had the power to bring form, order, and life to the chaos of non-being. This idea speaks to the profound potency of language. It isn't just descriptive, it is creative. Words, in a sense, are not mere labels attached to the world. They are the very building blocks that make up the structure of everything we know. When we speak, we are not simply describing what is already present. We are enacting it. To speak is to manifest, to give life to ideas, to transform them into physical, tangible realities, to take what is in your mind and to make it shareable with others. This is why the ancient concept of incantation is so important. In many cultures, words were seen as sacred tools capable of shaping the world. Incantations were more than mere chants. They were commands to the universe, carrying the power to change both the inner and outer worlds of those who uttered them. When we speak, we are casting spells, not in some supernatural sense, but in the sense that words have the power to change reality. To recite a word is to become the word, to embody it, to act it out. We've all heard the word abracadabra. Aleister Crowley, a renowned occultist and mystic, was known for his innovative and esoteric interpretations of magical symbols and phrases. He adapted the ancient word abracadabra to create a new phrase, abrahadabra, which holds significant spiritual and philosophical meaning. The phrase means I create as I speak, or I create through the word. This phrase resonated with Crowley's concept of the Logos, or the divine word, as a creative force. In Greek philosophy and early Christian theology, the Logos refers to the divine reason implicit in the cosmos, ordering it and giving it form and meaning. This concept became significant in Christian writings and doctrines as a vehicle for conceiving the role of Jesus as the active principle of God in the universe. In Christianity, the Logos is a name or title of Jesus Christ, seen as the pre-existent second person of the Trinity. Beyond Christian theology, the Greek word logos has various meanings, including thought, speech, meaning, reason, proportions, principle, standard, or logic. It indicates a rational explanation in contrast to a mythological one. In modern literature, the term logos has been used metaphorically to describe the search for meaning and authenticity in a chaotic world. This brings us to the incredible power of affirmations, which have become a popular tool for personal transformation. When we speak affirmations, when we repeat words of encouragement or self-belief, we are not simply hoping for change. We are enacting that change. We are aligning our inner worlds with the external world by repeating words that shift our consciousness. The act of saying something is, in itself, an act of becoming. Whether positive or negative, the words we use mold our thoughts, shape our beliefs, and direct our actions. It is through language that we create the blueprint for our lives. At the deepest level, communication itself is an attempt at transgression, an attempt to enter the mind of another, to breach the boundary that separates one consciousness from another. When we speak, we offer a piece of ourselves to another person, an attempt to convey our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. Speech is an act of connection, but is also an act of violation, because through words we are entering the mental space of another, attempting to reshape their world, even if only for a moment. To communicate is to engage in a kind of psychic transference, an exchange of meaning that can shift perceptions, alter moods, and even change beliefs. The listener, in turn, receives this energy and reacts, sometimes unconsciously, to the words spoken. We are constantly in the process of constructing and negotiating reality, not just through our own words, but through the words of others. Ultimately, this perspective opens up a fascinating possibility. We have the potential to become authors of reality. If language is so powerful, then we are not merely passive recipients of the world around us. We are active participants in its creation. Every time we speak, every time we choose a word, we are writing the script of our lives. If we acknowledge the generative power of language, we could start to consciously author our own reality. We can choose the words that shape our identities, our relationships, our societies, and even our futures. By embracing the full power of words, we can reshape our experiences, not just as passive observers, but as active creators. So I leave you with this thought. Words are not simply tools we use to describe the world. They are the very essence of it. Through language, we build, we shape, we create. Through language, we have the power to become the authors of our own reality. Every time we speak, we are participating in the act of creation. The question is not whether we can change the world with words, it's whether we will recognize that we already are changing it. Every time we utter a sound, every time we write a sentence, every time we communicate. The world is made of words. We are made of words. And together, we have the power to speak the world into existence.